I'm glad, like, even when we opened this morning, some of you asking questions, like we have heard how we are transmitting or sharing this knowledge to various stakeholders, but what about the smallholder farmers? That's exactly the lead, what we can hear from this presentation. What I'm going to do, when we say develop and sustain ICT innovations for smallholder agriculture, because we are talking about the smallholder agriculture. Many of you are the agriculture experts. You know the classification. We say small, medium, large farmers. The large farmers, they never ever had any problems, because you know that one, because they know their ways and they know how to get the things done. But really, when we would look at the smallholder farmers, they are the people who always faces the challenges. So at the same time, we need to look at why do we need to talk about the ICTs. We achieved the green revolution without ICTs in 60s and 70s. When we achieved the green revolution, do we have the ICTs? Am I right? No. Where are we talking about the ICTs? So that's what we are going to briefly discuss, like maybe why we are talking about the ICTs, what exactly ICTs means to us, what are these information and communication technologies. So at the same time, we would also just briefly look at and discuss like maybe how we can do these things, what are the major challenges, what are the opportunities. Though I haven't provided any slides, but briefly I touch on the other ICT projects, maybe when I demonstrate an execution framework, like maybe how do we need to build an ICT project, and also how do we need to evaluate and understand various dimensions and the dynamics for the particular location. Some of you are sitting here, you are experts in this area. Please feel free to contribute and also share your knowledge also, okay? It's also a half an hour, but we can spend 5 or 10 minutes more before we go for a break, and we can have the discussion also, okay? Okay, before going into the details, let me tell about what exactly ICTs means to us and ICTs means to ICRISAT. The information and communication technologies, whenever we talk about the IT and ICT, often the internet, computers comes to our mind. Am I right? That's what people say, IT or ICT. Because if you could look at here, we are showing various tools, like there is a mobile phone, there is a tablet, there is a radio, and there is a television, and also the internet and the computers also. Because ICTs are anything. Sometimes that may be one technology, sometimes that's a combination of technologies. But what we need to understand is, we need to understand what works in a given kind of situation. For example, when we have started our work on ICTs, we were using computers here in India, but we were using community radios in Africa, because those were the one people accepted. But in many cases, the changing scenarios, so here Professor Chowdhury is here, he knows the software and hardware. Any of the software and hardware life cycle is how many years, or 3 years or 5 years? Maximum 5 years. So if you could look at that one, Microsoft, when they come up with this one, Office 1997, 2000, XP, those are the changing scenarios. Like, because how these things emerge, or they even bring these different versions based on the user needs, how the users are required these features, how they would like to see them. Sometimes you also receive bug or something, hey, report your bug. They will get a feedback. So that helps them to bring the next versions, okay? And if you could look at the other ICTs, first time what we have seen, like maybe we use it to communicate way back, how we use it to communicate through the postal letters or the postcards. When did you guys last send a postal mail to communicate with your friends? Use it the post office, not for the official communication, just to talk to your friend or send a message. When did you send? Anybody? 10 years back. That's a good one. Okay, 10 years back. Why are we not using that one? Telephones came, okay? Because these are the modern opportunities. These are the changing scenarios. If these are existed, why not we use them? But in many cases, what's happening, though we are not talking about the digital divide now, but when there was a time, there were computers and internet existed, there was a jargon, digital divide. Like the elite groups only, they are enjoying these contemporary ICT benefits, but not the smallholder farmers. How do we bridge this gap? how do we eliminate the digital divide? But that's not happening thanks to the mobile revolution. Because why we are doing this one, how we are expediting the process, how we are bringing the changes in our practices, day-to-day operations. We have seen several innovative approaches and the technology opportunities during last 4 days for various purposes. Now we will see in the case of agriculture also. If you could look at the biggest challenge what we have, we often hear the term called agriculture is at crossroads. In many conferences we hear that one. And the smallholder farmers would like to give up agriculture if they find alternative livelihood opportunities. Did we talk about the climate change during the Green Revolution time? No. Did we talk about the price fluctuations, not the minimum support price, the price fluctuations during the Green Revolution time? No. In 60s, there used to be a ship-to-mouth condition. When ship comes here, we use it to get the foodstuffs. But in 66 and 70s, we organized a training visit system and tell them like how do they need to use these, what is that, the dwarf wheat varieties and everything to improve the productivity and the profitability, okay? Extension played a key role in advancing the food security during the Green Revolution. Yes, that's the one. Though we have these research results, but it's not reaching to the smallholder farmers now. So we need to see how we can bridge this gap. So what are the challenges? If you could look at this one, the challenges are many more now. But the opportunities, what do we have? Like the climate change, the land degradation, loss of biodiversity, the food crisis. We say we need to improve the production and productivity by 2005 to satisfy the food demands of almost like 9 billion, 2050, 9 billion. We need to increase the food production. Who are from ICR system here? What NSS report says, madam, which published in 2005? The farmers' interest in agriculture. So the NSS report that reports 40% of the farmers would like to give up agriculture if they find alternative livelihood opportunities. 40%. That was a report in 2005. We are talking about increasing the food production and the productivity. And the other way we are talking about farmers going out of agriculture. These two are going in two different directions. And in the middle we are talking, hey, we developed a new climate resilient seed variety. We have a best scientific experiment result. But how, what is happening to these results? This is existing in the middle. So we need to see how we can make sure to reach out these results to the smallholder farmers. And we also see what are the current extension systems are doing. And before that one, let's look at this hunger map. You can see where are the alarming ones and how do we need to fill this gap. And you can read many more details. I'm not going to touch on this one. It is from the World Food Program. And at the same time, we can look at that one. Why the production and productivity not at par? If you could look at many smallholder farmers' fields, there are yield gaps. There is a potential, like 100 to 300%. That's the yield gap that ranges between the field to field, that varies from farm field to the other farmer field. Because the one thing is the fluctuations in various scenarios, and the other one is the low input and the practices what they are applying. If you can fill these gaps, you can fill this yield gap from here to here. So how we need to fill that one, that's where we need to see. As I mentioned, like maybe we have best practices even at ICRISAT also, but how we are ensuring to reach out to the smallholder farmers. This is what I'm talking about, like the extension systems. If you can just look at the case of India, I'm sure like in Africa, those are the similar scenarios, because even in some countries, the public extension system is completely dead. The NGOs are playing a key role in providing these extension services. If you could look at in India's case, we have almost like 6,75,000 villages. We require 6,75,000 extension officers. Do we have that many people? That includes the ICR as well as the State Agriculture University personnel. How many do we have, madam? Your extension specialist from now. Yeah. In country, even if you can count the new recruitments, everything, that's total around 100,000. Okay. the 100,000 extension officers, but we have 6,70,000 villages. Are these extension officers allocating their entire time on extension services? What are the other services they are doing? Vasanta, you are from Angro. Super. Are they going to participate in these election duties? Are the census data? Okay. Are they going to prepare the reports, the administration? Their promotions are based on how many extension services they are provided, or their promotions are based on the reports? Based on the reports. That's a good one. Okay. Because these people are meant for providing the extension services. Because what is the motivation for them? Am I right? Like maybe if you could look at this one, the people, despite of all these things, if they are very much interested to provide the extension services, if they determine to provide the extension services, they allocate all their working hours, they can spend only 40 minutes per farmer per year. 40 minutes. That's per year. 365 days, because they have the larger jurisdiction. Some people, they have a responsibility of 23 villages or 24 villages. I'm not talking about the other responsibilities, seed distribution and everything. If you could look at the extension and farmer ratio, that's 1:2,000. So those are the gaps. But the single person can leverage his efficiencies if he can use the ICTs, information and communication technologies. Once you go back to your respective places, if I need to meet all of you, or if I need to convey a message, if I need to come by person, how many days that would take to me? How many days I take to talk to you or to communicate? At least a month or 2 months, even I plan a rigorous schedule, okay? But I can send a message, email, I can communicate with you all in just 5 to 10 minutes time. Okay. But how are we using those opportunities? We need to look at that one, because we need to use the ICTs and the other scenarios. Our governments are not in a position to provide many more funds, to provide more institutions, or to recruit more people. It's not that easy. And the dwindling financial resources and the support from both federal and the state governments, that's where we need to see, rather than asking them, or rather than maybe looking at those investments, do we have any alternative opportunities? Can we use those alternative opportunities to strengthen the existing extension systems? That's what we are going to look at that one. Because these are the opportunities, we need to utilize that one, and we need to see what kind of differences we are making. And even before we introduce or anything, we need to understand what are the existing scenarios, how these people are getting information or these services. This study was conducted way back in the same place at the cow where we will be going tomorrow. If you can look at the weak links, most of the farmers satisfy their information or educational needs by approaching to the fellow farmers, like the neighbors or the family friends or the relatives. These are the horizontal information flows. These were very strong. But these people, most of these people, not very well aware of the modern scientific practices, because these people learn trial and error. If I spray something, if that would work, irrespective of knowing for what problem I sprayed that one, I provide the same information to my fellow farmers. Sometimes that may be a fit that's like otherwise the iron deficiency. Sometimes they couldn't differentiate that one. But sometimes that would work, sometimes that wouldn't work. That increases the cost of cultivation and affects to the profitability end of the cropping season. And the other resources, the major information resources for the farmers in the typical rural village, who provides the advisory? Private companies, pesticide and fertilizer shop owners. Do they bother about the welfare of the farmers, or do they bother about their welfare? Their welfare, because those are the not reliable sources, because they always look at the profits. And the final are the natural resource management agencies we discussed, because though they would like to provide these services, because they have the other responsibilities which actually motivates them to do those things, because their promotions are purely dependent on that one. Then of them ask like how many farmers get benefited out of your services. And at the same time, most of these people, they have the responsibilities. How many of you extension officers here at least know about the extension services? Most of these extension agents, correct me Vasanta if I'm saying something wrong, they have some contacts, the progressive farmers. If they need to organize Kisan Mela or something, they communicate with them, get the job done, prepare a report, that's all. The smallholder farmers' access to these melas or these services are really difficult. Sometimes that's a nightmare. So we can look at the same gap here. And the other one is the credit is an important component. That's like economic empowerment. And most of these people, like maybe after they see one or two sprinklers, they lend money from the people, money lenders, and they sow the seeds and go for the cultivation. And if they don't get the irrigation or the rains in the critical initiation stages, they end up getting chaffy grains or the products which are not useful for the market as well as not for their consumption also, for the family consumption. So they ended up not getting anything. So we need to make sure like maybe how we are providing these services and everything. The NSS report I mentioned like provided the similar kind of results what we have seen. So that's where like maybe first we started setting up these village knowledge centers. I can provide you a brief story since you have asked like maybe why didn't we talk about the MSSRF and everything. If you could look at in the early stages like IT, whom we usually call father of Indian Green Revolution or the environmental. Who is that person in India? Swaminathan. Okay. And in 60s and 70s, he mentioned use of inputs are very, very important. Like there were, I'm not going into the details, but the same person, what is he advocating? Agriculture is becoming more and more knowledge intensive, no longer to be an input intensive. We need to bring the knowledge transfers among and across various communities. We need to bring the knowledge revolution to achieve more productivity and production. He realized that one way back in 90s, and he organized a dialogue, information dialogue in agriculture, IT. You can look at that one, that proceedings also available. He invited many people from various parts of the world, and he put this proposal like maybe how do we about using these computers to strengthen the extent express it like no. Why do we need to use the computers? Because we have several other problems. We need to look at the water management issues or the other bigger challenges. Why do we need to invest in this one? And few people even went beyond this level and they have mentioned, hey, if you set up the computers, somebody steal these computers. Few people even went beyond and said, we know the remote rural conditions. Do you know them? Because the rats may spoil those wires and become useless. So despite of all these things, there is an international organization called IDRC. Some of you know this one, International Development Research Center. They came forward, hey, let's give it a try. Because those are the donor agencies. Earlier that was like a charity, like USAID and everybody, they were giving aid. But now nobody is talking about an aid. It's like an impact investment, no longer to be an aid. Everybody, they wanted to see the impact. That time they came forward and they provided support to set up these infrastructure facilities. They have identified Patancheru because they get more flexibilities. Because that's the same principle. When we started this green revolution, where we first experimented there? Punjab. Okay, that's a resourceful area, am I right? The Punjab is full of natural resources. We didn't try in Rajasthan. We didn't try in deserted areas because we need low-hanging fruits. We need lesser challenges. We need to show the quick wins. We need to show the quick result. In the similar way, Patancheru, that's a union territory, they would get those flexibilities because the legal issues or the technology challenges, everything they can overcome. So they have started that one and they have introduced services. That's how they started working on these rural knowledge centers. Later it became popular as telecenters, village knowledge centers, Mission 2007 movement. Mission 2007, they conceptualized it to see every village has a knowledge center. Are we talking about those village knowledge centers now? No. Because now the mobile phones become like very prominent. We don't need to invest on that one. The same thing, why we didn't talk about that one? These are the first generation ICT applications. it talks about like maybe how we can aggregate the information from various sources like global, national, and even district level, validate them, and use wide variety of tools to make sure how we are reaching this information to the smallholder farmers. So in those cases, if you can look at this one, why the Mission 2007 didn't materialize? Because still what we are doing, we are setting up these rural knowledge centers, investing in the infrastructure. We need an intermediary. We need to train those people, investing in the capacity building activities. Are we setting up a additional extra extension layer? Are we setting up these extension offices? We are talking about how we can minimize these infrastructure or the human resource facilities to fill the gap. So we are going into the same mode. At the same time, there are several other challenges because those days these platforms only can facilitate the language of English. And you need to train these people not only on the subject matter, you need to train them on these IT literacy also. Akshaya, the whole Akshaya project is on IT literacy, ICT for development. So we are investing more and more. Despite of doing all these things, we ended up not establishing the last mile connectivity. Some of you know that one. And that's how these are in small bits and pieces. So thanks to the mobile revolution, and we have started with the SMS, the text-based service, in the same location to understand how these mobile phones would work. The opportunities with the mobile phones, we don't need to invest in the infrastructure. I was looking at a newspaper, like I think some 12 to 15 months back, the Hindu on the front article that says, in India, we have more mobile phones than the toilets. Everybody, they have a mobile phone. How we would like to utilize these platforms, how we can take advantage of these platforms, that's an important thing. We are not investing in infrastructure. How many did you receive training to get to know how to operate a mobile phone? Did you receive any training, day training, half day training, or an hour training? Anybody? No? So that also shows like we don't need to provide or invest in the capacity building activities, okay? It's like a functional literacy. And to get to know like maybe how do we operate a mobile phone. That's another one. So can we take advantage of mobile phones to send these messages? We started with these text-based services, SMS-based services. So, but again the challenges, like maybe if we would start with these text-based services, most of our people are illiterate or semi-literate individuals, not be able to understand. But the beauty is, these people can count the money. These people can count the fertilizer bag. That's a functional literacy. That shows if they hear or if they understand, they can practice. But these people are using mobile phones, communication, talking to each other. Can we use that kind of mechanism? So we started sending the voice messages. Initially, we started this experiment, and we tried out with these 10,000 farmers. What kind of messages we were sending during that time? The package of practices, that's a push-based messages. Like maybe we are pushing messages, like 3 messages, 4 messages, 5 messages. IKSL colleagues are here. They can tell that one, how they push these messages in 16 different categories. Am I right? Okay, weather, crop, climate, and everything. So in those messages, we are sending the voice messages, but these are the package of practices. You have asked a question, sir, like how we can bring the accuracy lesser than 1 or the coefficient variance. There is a project called like Agriculture Model Intercomparison and Improvement Program, because how we can codify the agriculture knowledge is very, very important and very difficult thing. And how we can combine these abiotic factors. I don't go into the much details about these global climatic models, GCMs and everything, handle the abiotic factors, but I can say we can codify the knowledge, like maybe correlating with the climate modeling and the economic modeling aspects. These are the emerging opportunities, like maybe for chickpea, PGNP, groundnut, wheat, these are successful. How it shows, it's like a simulation modeling, like there is a DSAT, now they come up with these 23 crop modeling approaches, like that's the standard practices. They take all the data, like if I provide this kind of soil conditions, if I provide this fertilizer, if I provide this one, these are the conditions. and what would be my productivity and the profitability. You can understand that one. Okay? But we need to have that reliable data. If you have the better forecasting, if you can correlate with the climate modeling, you can use this model, and you can also bring the projections for next 1 year or for that particular crop. Even you can bring the projections how this crop should be after 20 years for the policymakers. At the same time, you can use similar kind of tools in the smallholder farmers also, what kind of benefits they can get. But these are the models standardized. But for a location, you need to calibrate them. You need to understand for 2 seasons or 3 seasons how these models perform. Then you can scale up, because you are understanding what kind of errors it's giving, whether it's a workable model or not. That's how we are codifying. If you are interested, we can talk more about this agriculture model intercomparison and improvement project. And Subhash also can tell about this one. He's a rising star in AgMed. Okay. So what we are talking about here is we spoke about the push-based services, but at the same time, we need to understand whether we can generate the personalized information services. If you could look at any project, ICT for development project, they always send out these messages that's mostly like a push. Like we are sending this market price information. We are sending these advisory information through various platforms like mobile or even internet or anything. But we need to understand these are personalized services. Pradesh, you know that one. Okay, how you are doing this one, like because you are providing personalized services that actually generate the revenue. For example, if that's a generic information, probably people might not be interested, but some extent like climate and everything, those generic information would work out. So we have started developing a crop value chain approach. Like we map out all the farmers' soils, understand the deficiencies. Even the smaller interventions also create an impact on the prediction and productivity. For example, you are a weaker person, can you work very well? You take some rest and become healthy, come back to office again, am I right? It's also in the similar way, the soil is a living organism, you need to correct the deficiencies. We will hear about the Bhuchetana project. The simple interventions, we corrected the micronutrient deficiencies, brought a difference in the prediction and the productivity end of the season, okay? And at the same time, you also need to provide the precise advisories to minimize the cost on the fertilizer and pesticide application. That's also an important thing. And you are bringing the accountability. And you are making all these transactions and keeping track of these things. Despite of all doing all these things, despite of increasing the prediction and productivity, if we ended up not providing better marketing opportunities, or if the farmers not getting better price for their produce, then there is no use of getting the higher productivity also. So you need to establish the channels. So what is happening here, what are we doing? Not only we are providing information, we are also bundling this one with provision of quality inputs. How we can combine these things, how we can bring various players into this one, create an ecosystem. So we are talking about these private sector players like fertilizer, pesticides, how we can bring these people. I'm not talking about the new platform. I can say it's just like a Amazon or eBay kind of platform where you get the products on a cheaper price. How many of you are aware of the Amazon or eBay? Many of you. Because what they are doing is they are minimizing these transactions or bringing reforms in the supply chain. Okay? And usually when you could look at like the producers produce a product, when that reaches to the end user, there are several transactions. We often hear like Coca-Cola, they produce only 2 rupees. The moment it's coming, that's because we are investing. The ITC brought the similar kind of interventions, how they can eliminate the commission agents by bulbs, because they have a better control on the price. So in the similar way, how we are creating this ecosystem, and we are introducing many players and minimizing the cost and bringing a win-win situation to everybody. And when you are visiting the Center of Excellence this afternoon, my colleague Suman will explain you like maybe how this platform looks like and what are the modules so far we developed, where are we carrying this experiment. He will provide some more. We are looking at 3 different kind of models. As I mentioned, we need to understand how these things would work out. One is in medical with microfinance organizations. We will get to know like maybe. The second one is which is that one, the Anantapur Rural Development Trust, because we are working with NGO to understand various dimensions and dynamics, how the NGO system is working. The other one is Karnataka. Mukund, are you going to make the presentation, sharing the experience? Anant, so Anant is going to explain like maybe how we are doing this one in Bhuchetana in Karnataka. Okay. So these are the three models we are trying to understand that one. Okay. For an example, we will see how we are working with IKSL under this Krishivani platform, where they can provide better details also. The ATEL and IFCO, they are bringing up with us and they are partnering with us in participating in this experiment to bring these location-specific advisory services. Okay, we named that one as a Krishivani. Probably now we are bringing a global name as a Green Sim. And 5 voice messages they send that one. The advantage in this one is we can clearly see how we can create these info entrepreneurs in the remote rural locations is important. We are not talking about a new model. How many of you are aware of these registered medical practitioners, RMP doctors in remote rural villages? Everybody aware of that one? I don't think so. Are you aware of that one, everybody? Okay. What they do in a rural village, typical, are they MBBS doctors? Who are they? No certification. What they do? Yeah, they come to village. If they give an injection, they charge 10 rupees. They come to home, am I right? If they give a tablet, and they charge 5 rupees. It's a similar model. You can see like maybe if you can think of an info entrepreneur who are having this tablet with this virtual platform, they emerge like an info entrepreneurs, but we are not charging farmers. The margins are coming from the private companies. In the similar way, for example, Airtel in this model, what they do, if these people sell a SIM card and this info entrepreneur get 10 rupees. If they sell a talk time, how much commission do you guys give? You know that? See, they get a commission. In the initial stages, Anantapur, we aimed at creating a community of 5,000 members, but with a target of 4 months to reach out 5,000. Surprisingly, we achieved that one in how many days a month? 31 working days. Okay. And we have the info entrepreneurs collected a money of 31,000 Indian rupees. The biggest challenge in most of these ICT for development projects, the financial sustainability. If you talk about MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, they have achieved the social sustainability. If you talk about the ITC model, that's a different story because they are investing resources in this one for their business opportunities. You can look at any model, the CSCs and everything. We need to ensure the financial sustainability. Otherwise, if you start a project, once the project ends, that's all that gets closer. But how we can ensure the financial sustainability, that's an important thing. We started with this simple application to understand the generic approach. But as we grow on, we can see also how we can bring the other players. We are working with big software companies also because we are aiming at bringing an industry standard platform, not a toy platform. So they are bringing that one and we are working as a partnership approach. I may not be able to provide much more details on that one, but hopefully we will see that one in next couple of months. Okay, this is, I just wanted to share that one. And what it's showing, like maybe when we are talking all these applications, we need to have a platform where we can bring all these interdisciplinary teams together and make them to work on these specific applications. Because when I'm talking about anything, like I mentioned, like database system for agriculture, we need to have the database management experts and the subject matter experts also to understand the scenario. The similar way, if I'm developing some app or some application or anything that would work in a specific situation, we need to understand what are the requirements, what are the challenges, what kind of solutions we have, how we can convert that one into a product. We need the interdisciplinary team. That's why we set up a small lab, we can say, that provides a platform to bring the science, technology, and value chain approaches together, create more financial sustainable model. We say farm to fork, because farm is like the moment you sow some seeds till the food gets to your dining table, whatever that may be. It covers all these areas. These are early stages, but this is our idea to create a backbone communication framework using these public-private partners. And I briefly touch on this. Some of you may be interested to know like maybe what kind of methodology we need to follow. The needs assessment is very, very important. I don't get into more details, but you can understand. It's part of my thesis work. Dr. Chowdhury is aware of that one. He has contributed also. We need to understand the needs. Like maybe whenever we conduct any project, we need to understand what are the information needs. At the same time, how these information flows are there, what kind of infrastructure facilities are there, what kind of interventions we need to bring. Those are the things we need to understand. At the same time, you mobilize the resources also. But always you need to give a sense of ownership to the communities, to give them a actually being organized by them, executed by them, and this is for them. The kind of sense of ownership we need to give to ensure like we provide them, we create financially sustainable models. Capacity building, when I'm talking about in the case of mobiles, that's not required. But when we are executing some other activities, we need to the installation and incubation, like we install a service that takes certain time, because some of you know this diffusion of innovation principles, like maybe how these interventions go in a specific. These must and should we need to closely monitor and observe how these things are working out. Every learning experience should be fed back into the system to evolve this one more robust system. That's what we need. And here's the socio-cultural. We briefly talk about like how took an example of computers and the community radio, because what the society is accepting the technology. And the technical factors are very, very important. For example, if you could look at ITC Chopal, ITC Chopal is not that highly successful in the case of aqua and coffee, because the farmers are different. You can read my case study on the aqua Chopal, because there the mobile interventions would work very well, because the other socio-cultural conditions like earlier days, like few people, they don't want to enter into these village knowledge centers because of the social prestige. Those are the cases also, you can see that one. And the economical aspect, we talked about the financial sustainability, how we can bring out that. The political, it's an interesting thing. Probably I can quote on this one. When I wrote a report, when I was working on these rural e-seva centers, some of you are aware of these e-seva centers, okay? And we wrote like now these centers appears to be financially sustainable thanks to the payments, but we may not know if the future governments may keep these centers or not. So because of the demands from the citizens, because citizens identified these centers working very well, so still those centers exist, but what is the name of those centers now in Andhra? E-Seva, now Me-Seva. In between there is one more name. Rajiv Internet Villages or something. Am I right? So the name has been changed, and these are some dimensions and dynamics, but if you provide a sustainable platform, and these things may not influence that much. Otherwise, these governments can close down these projects because it's all in power. So those factors also play a key role. And the legal things like the VoIP, voice over internet protocols, maybe we need to position according to the telecom regulations in those specific countries. Those are also very, very important. And we need to consider those legal parameters also. In all these things, the content and capacity building act like a glue in various components of here. Let me briefly touch on this one for 2 minutes, next 2 minutes, then maybe we... Whatever you have seen so far, like maybe even from the day one, the one thing is clearly emerging, how we are aggregating all these research results, that may be data, information, and education. The knowledge acquisition is very, very important, and we need to create a repository. Dr. Divakar, what he demonstrated, that's the learning modules, otherwise even the information chunks that may be in audio, video, or image, PPT, Word document, whatever the format, we need to do that one. At the same time, we need to follow the knowledge modeling principles, like some standards, we need to follow that one to make sure how we can share this knowledge to wide variety of platforms, how we can model that one to feed into these pluralistic approaches to ensure this will be reaching to the end users. There are some other research areas, the Web 2 and Web 3, ICT for development. Let me not get into those details, but we can discuss. how this web is emerging. Like earlier days, we have seen only the web 1, how the web administrators used it to publish these materials. Now we are talking about these wikis and blogs. They are providing empty boxes, users providing the content in that one. Am I right? And once users, they are providing the content, these websites are growing. And it's like, sometimes we see, if I need to find out an accurate information in Google, I ended up not getting that one even after spending an hour and 2 hours also. Did that happen to you anytime? Full of information. So now we are working on these Web3 semantic web technologies and the other approaches. We can on that one if anybody is interested. Then ICT for development, open distance learning extension. What is emerging end of the day, if you can look at that one, the strategic coalition of the partners are very, very important for knowledge aggregation and knowledge sharing or any kind of partnership approach. We need to follow that one. And the knowledge organization, validation, and dissemination mechanisms are validate the knowledge before we disseminate. And most of these services must build an assessment of local needs as locally defined by the local people. That's it. These are the basic principles we follow. And this experimental hub, let me not touch on this one. We can see, why do we have these experimental hubs? To better understand what works and what didn't work in a specific location. We have 3 experimental hubs. You have an opportunity. So what we believe in sharing the right information with the right people at the right time through the right channel. Thank you. We can have 1 or 2 questions and continue the interactions over Teams. From where are you, sir? You're from Orissa. So what are the scenarios? Like if you can look at before ICT and after ICT, we have these state agriculture universities, that extension system is there. ICR KVKs are there, okay? These systems are there. Still these systems are there. What we are trying here, we are introducing these new opportunities, the novel approaches, and how we can strengthen these existing systems. We are bringing this inclusion approach, okay? There are 2 approaches. We can set up our own system like ICT system, but we ended up not achieving that particular scale, okay, because we may not be able to cover. But you need to see how you can strengthen these existing systems. Whatever the initiatives, those are happening to better understand how these things are working. So now in the 12th 5-year plan, they are taking these lessons and bringing these ICT applications. Now we are ready. So they are scaling up at a national level, not only national level. We are taking some of our experiences to Tanzania and Nepal and Zimbabwe and to some of our other locations also. But most of these experiences are proven successful experiences, are proven successful. That's what we need to understand. The replication and the scalability comes only after you test these applications.
Dilip, here I would like problem with the mobile initiatives, but sustainability aspect will come. As long as the farmers are getting gone very well. Once the fund
as I mentioned, Vasanta, like in my presentation, there are 2 different kinds of sustainability approaches. One is the social sustainability. The other one is the financial sustainability. Okay? The project more, you can achieve the social sustainability. Get money, you have goals and objectives. If you deliver that one, that's good. Like you are successful, am I right? But the financial sustainability, when you talk about that one, that's where I discussed about this ecosystem approach. These RMP doctors, I gave an example, like how you are generating revenue opportunities to keep these activities or get going. Okay, so now these are the services, the combination of services, how you are bringing these services together to generate the revenue. But your approach is not only to generate the revenue, but at the same time you need to ensure these companies are working in favor of smallholder agriculture. Otherwise, you are creating a healthy environment or a platform. You need to identify sectoral neutral organization. For example, most of these public organizations, they are not promoting any product. Am I right? When you prescribe with the chemical name, not the brand. But at the same time, when you have this prescribing the chemical name, at the same time you can tell these are the products available. Hey, you choose. You are giving the choice to your customer. And once they are ready, they can use this virtual transaction platform. Then they can get the product at their doorsteps. Okay. At the same time, you need to look at the other organizations. That's where you are generating the money. That's why I'm saying information services, after working more than a decade in this area, I can say these never ever generate any revenue, except in very few cases, the high value crops. Because those people are in need of that one. For example, if you could look at aqua or horticulture crops, those are like maybe you invest 1 rupee, you expect 6 rupees in 3 months time, okay? But during that process, if you are even negligent, if your negligence even for 10 to 20 minutes also, that makes you lose your lifelong investments. They don't mind even recruiting 2 or 3 people. Those are exceptional cases. But in the case of smallholder farmers, the information services never generate any revenue. If you say I provide an advisory 50 rupee, you give me 50 rupees. But if you provide better marketing opportunities, they may subscribe or they may take a membership. Those are the opportunities we need to ensure, but we are taking steps in that particular direction. I'm optimistic we will. That's what I'm saying. The market price, that's what they see, like maybe they wanted to get, because the profitability, they don't understand the accountability because they're not maintaining the records or they're not maintaining. We take 2 more questions, Mehta and then Dr. Gunjal, then maybe it's almost like we are running behind the late, that's all. Gujarat. Then we can continue the discussions over tea. Tell me, sir.
In Gujarat,
in article tomorrow you will see, when we have started this one, now they're asking like whether we can get a loan to buy a mobile phone. That's a dual, they need dual SIM. They would not like to lose their earlier connection. And that's the question they have raised just 15 days ago when we had a CCR panel. The last question, yeah. But we can interact over tea.
Well, it is a little bigger question. I would like to share the experience. I was working as a deputy director agriculture. And based on that development of Raleigh and Sindhi, as we were there, village, the project has once they withdraw the project to about the self-sustainability and withdraws, it never becomes
That's what we ended up the presentation by discussing those details only, sir. But one point what you have raised, that's very, very valid. Like you have some model here. If you wanted to replicate the model as it is, that's not going to work out. Because we discussed even in the case of ICTs, if we have introduced the computers in Africa, we might have failed. That's why we come up with this community radio model. So that's why when we are working on these models, we always understand what are the constants, what are the variables. That's how we replicate that one. Some are constant, some are varies from location to location. We need to pick up those variables. Some products are so popular in US, those are not going to work here because of our cultural conditions, the other climatic conditions or something. And if you could look at Gujarat is so successful with cooperative dairy farming. How many states achieved the success with the cooperative? Why that did work? Then Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu, he tried. We considerably seen. So why is not that happening? Because we need to look at various parameters. At the same time, the champions also very, very important. Most of these people, they should have a passion to set up these institutions, to develop these institutions. Once that's there, then that will go through. So those parameters we need to understand, and we need to bring these generic models to those specific local conditions. Even these models also, when I mentioned these crop models or climatic models, I mentioned we need to calibrate those models to understand the local scenarios without trying to scale up those things. Always an experiment, understand various scenarios, refine or bring it into a different shape to ensure like maybe we achieve the financial sustainability. We can take some more questions over tea. Otherwise we